Close your eyes for a second and picture the word slave. That's where most history books start this story. Chains first, pain first. But what if the very first chapter was never written that way at all? What if I told you that 1,000 years ago, to be black meant to be untouchable? A king whose gold was so vast, it broke an economy just by walking through it. A scholar whose library pulled students from 3 continents. A warrior whose empire stretched further than the eye could see. And what if I told you that the same bloodline that built that empire would later be reduced to a number stitched onto a shipping manifest, and then, generation by generation, would claw its way back to the microphone, the courtroom, the boardroom, and the world stage? This isn't a story about victims. This is a story about a people who were built, broken, and rebuilt over and over by history itself. Today, we're not reading dates off a page. We're stepping inside the skin of the people who lived it, era by era, from the palaces of Mali to the streets of today. This is what it actually felt like being black in every era of human history. Before we go back in time, I need to ask you something. History is written by whoever holds the pen. And for most of the last 500 years, that pen was not in our hands. The truth didn't disappear. It just went quiet, hidden in songs, in scars, in stories, passed down at kitchen tables instead of in classrooms. If you believe those stories deserve to be said out loud, hit subscribe and tap that notification bell right now. It costs you 1 second. It keeps this channel alive to keep digging up what almost got erased. Done? Good. Let's go back to the beginning. You open your eyes in the Nile Valley, thousands of years before anyone will ever question your worth because of your skin. Here, in Kemet, what the world will later call Egypt, black pharaohs build monuments that will still be standing 4,000 years from now. Further south, along the river, the kingdom of Kush grows so powerful it eventually conquers Egypt itself, ruling as its 25th dynasty. Nobody here calls you inferior. They call you priest, architect, general, king. Fast forward now to the 14th century. You are standing in the Mali Empire, and the man passing through your city is Mansa Musa, a name that will one day be recorded as the wealthiest human being who ever lived, richer by some estimates than anyone in modern history. When he travels to Mecca, he brings so much gold with him that he single-handedly crashes the price of gold across the entire Mediterranean for over a decade, just by giving it away in the streets. But wealth isn't even the most important part of this era. In Timbuktu, under Mansa Musa's rule, a university and library complex draws scholars from Cairo, Persia, and beyond. Manuscripts on astronomy, law, and medicine are written by black hands and studied by anyone lucky enough to make the journey. Being black here doesn't come with a category, a caste, or an asterisk. It simply comes with the same range of human possibility as being anyone else. Poor or rich, warrior or poet, ordinary or extraordinary. There is no global system yet that assigns you a lower rank because of your skin. That system doesn't exist, not yet. But on the horizon, ships are about to appear that will try to invent one and rewrite everything you thought was permanent. Now the ships arrive. First it's mirrors, cloth, small trinkets traded politely along the coastline. Then it's weapons. And hiding behind the weapons is something far more dangerous. A new idea. The idea that a human body can have a price tag and that the price has nothing to do with wealth. It has to do with capture. You don't choose this moment. It's chosen for you. One day you are a person with a name, a family, a trade. The next, you are bound, branded, and marched toward a coastline you've never seen, toward a ship built to carry you like cargo. The journey across the Atlantic, what history will call the Middle Passage, takes weeks in the dark, in the stench, in chains so tight you can't tell your own body's pain from the person's chained beside you. Some choose the ocean over the voyage. Millions never survive to see land again. When the ship finally docks, a stranger studies you like livestock, your teeth, your muscles, your age, and then brands a number onto your skin. That number becomes your new identity. Nobody asks what your name was. Nobody asks what you were trained to do. From this point on, in the eyes of the system being built around you, your only function is labor, until your body gives out or is simply replaced by the next ship. Historians estimate that more than 12 million Africans were forcibly transported across the Atlantic between the 15th and 19th centuries, and roughly 2 million never survived the crossing at all. Portugal and Britain were behind the overwhelming majority of that trade, and Brazil alone received a far greater share of enslaved Africans than the United States ever did. Yet in the U.S., the enslaved population kept growing because slavery there became something even darker: reproductive. Children were born not into families first, but into inventory, multiplying an owner's wealth before they multiplied anything else. Your day starts before sunrise and can stretch 16 hours. Cotton, sugarcane, tobacco. The crop changes, but the brutality doesn't. Illness is treated as a financial loss. Resistance is treated as a threat to be crushed publicly, so that everyone watching understands the cost of trying to leave. But total control is a myth, and cracks always show. Names were stolen, but memory wasn't. Languages were banned, but new ones were born in secret. Creole tongues, coded rhythms, hidden meanings folded into ordinary-sounding songs. Follow the Drinking Gourd wasn't just a lullaby. It was a map guiding people north by the stars. Faith services became meeting points for planning escape. Even inside a system engineered to erase you completely, something refused to be erased. The will to be free, passed hand to hand like a secret too important to lose. And it wasn't only survival. It was defiance built into everyday life. In Haiti, enslaved communities blended West African spiritual traditions with the religion forced upon them, creating something entirely new that colonizers never fully understood, let alone controlled. That same island would go on to host the only successful slave-led revolution in modern history. A rebellion so unthinkable to the powers of the time that some nations refused to even acknowledge Haiti's independence for decades afterward. The message underneath it all was simple: a system built purely on fear can still be outlasted by people who refuse to stop imagining freedom. Slavery ends on paper, but freedom on paper is not freedom in practice. Stop. You walk out with no land, no money, and a system quietly rebuilding itself around you. Sharecropping contracts designed to trap you in debt. Laws written to look neutral, but built to keep you exactly where you were. This is the quiet cruelty of Reconstruction. Freedom without the tools to use it. And yet, out of that struggle comes one of the most extraordinary cultural explosions in American history. Walk through 1920s Harlem, and you'll hear it before you see it. Jazz spilling out of every doorway, poets reading in smoke-filled rooms, painters redefining what black identity even means on canvas. This is the Harlem Renaissance, and it is the first time on this scale that black art insists on being seen not as a curiosity, but as genius. At the same time, two of the era's sharpest minds are locked in a battle over the very meaning of progress. W.E.B. Du Bois argues that liberation comes through education, protest, and claiming a seat at every table of power. Booker T. Washington argues that survival comes first. Build economic independence quietly, and equality will follow. Neither is entirely right, and neither is entirely wrong, but the argument itself proves something powerful. An identity that was once defined only by chains is now being defined by ideas, debate, art, and ambition. Across the ocean, the same fire is spreading. In Africa, colonized nations begin organizing, writing, and fighting for the independence that was stolen generations earlier. A new identity is being built, not the one assigned by an auction block, but one chosen, argued over, and claimed on your own terms for the very first time in centuries. You're standing on a street in the 1950s or 60s now, and the air feels different, charged. This is the era of what one leader will later call good trouble. Being black here means becoming a revolutionary simply by demanding what should have never been in question: the right to vote, to sit, to eat, to exist without asking permission. In the United States, boycott shuts down bus systems. Sit-ins fill lunch counters with people who refuse to move, no matter what's thrown at them. Marches stretch for miles under the threat of dogs, hoses, and worse. And, still, people keep walking. This isn't happening in isolation. On the other side of the world, in South Africa, an entire legal system called apartheid is built specifically to separate people by race and crush any resistance to it. And black South Africans respond with decades of organizing, strikes, and sacrifice that will eventually bring the entire system down. Meanwhile, in Britain, a generation of Caribbean migrants, later known as the Windrush generation, arrives by the thousands, invited to help rebuild a country after the war, only to face a different, colder kind of exclusion once they get there. 3 continents, 3 different systems of unfairness, one shared refusal to accept them. The price paid across all of it is enormous: arrests, violence, lives lost, but so is what's won: laws rewritten, doors forced open, and proof, permanent and undeniable, that organized courage can bend the direction of an entire country. What connects all 3 struggles is something deeper than geography. It's the understanding that dignity was never something to be granted from above. It had to be taken back, block by block, law by law, generation by generation. The people marching in Alabama, striking in Soweto, and stepping off ships in Liverpool never met each other, but they were fighting the exact same fight on 3 different stages at almost the exact same time. Now you're here, today. And the tools have changed completely. A phone in your pocket can broadcast an injustice to millions of people in seconds, which is exactly what happens when movements like Black Lives Matter turn hashtags into the largest wave of civil rights protests the modern world has seen. But this era isn't only about fighting battles inherited from the past. It's also, finally, about something else: black joy, on its own terms. Afrobeats artists top global charts and fill arenas on every continent. Black entrepreneurs and technologists are building companies, not just working inside them. Culture, fashion, language, and music that were once mocked or stolen without credit are now openly celebrated, driven, and owned by the very communities that created them. Being black today means holding 2 things at once: the memory of everything endured, and the freedom to define what comes next without asking anyone else's permission first. Being black in every era has meant carrying power and pain in the same breath. It has meant resilience that outlasted systems built specifically to break it, and progress that no chain, no law, and no ship could ultimately stop. This story didn't start with slavery, and it will not end with the struggles of today. It is the continuation of a legacy that refused, again and again, era after era, to be broken. So tell me, out of everything we just walked through, which era do you think is the most misunderstood? Drop it in the comments below. And if you learned something new today, do me a favor and hit that like button. It helps this story reach the people who need to hear it. I'll see you in the next one.